Welcome Yorkshire Classic Cars Limited fans and Capri fans, and hopefully Mark 1 Capri fans and modified Mark 1 Capri fans. Welcome back to, careful how you say that, welcome back to Tipping It Down Retford. You won't be able to see, but you can probably hear it on the roof again. The parts have now come. I'm back from my holidays, sorry for a 2-week stop, but I am now back off my jollies. The sun shone, it was beautiful. Went down to Devon, very, very nice down there. Whilst I was away, the nice 90-degree 3-inch elbow has come to my exhaust, as has a V-band. Expensive V-band. Turned out it has an M6 thread on. Hate these things, they usually snap the bolt. I'll probably just buy some outer clamps but use the inners. It's supposed to be 100% stainless, but you know, time will tell. Okay, so first off, I'm going to attach this in the car to the part of the exhaust I built in the last video. As you can see, most of it there. We came over the suspension, down under, through a flex, into the first box. I've teed into that, so there's a T coming out of the side. I'll show you that in a sec. I've jacked the car up. By the way, if anybody wonders how stiff that chassis is that I've built in there, you can see where the jack is. I've jacked up under the outer outrigger at the front, and you will also notice the rear wheel is up pretty much square with the whole deal. Okay, and before anybody thinks the axle stand is holding it up, it isn't. That's there just for safety. Okay, so back to the job in hand. I'll show you where I'm going to put this V-band, and then I'll get out the welder and the grinder. It's struck 5 bells, so it's now Doug's build his own car time. So that's going to go on here, right on the end of there. I'm going to tack this to that first, then pipe across into the other box. I'll show you how to do that. Off we go. Right, I've just tacked these two pieces together. I chose the straightest, flattest end of the offcut of the original 3-inch pipe, and as you can see, it's moved a little bit as I've welded it. So I'm going to grind that back off and weld it straight. I mean, it won't make any difference whatsoever, but that will drive me insane for the rest of my life knowing that's like that. So what I will do now is whip those welds back off. Break the welds off and re-weld that so it's nice and square together, just purely for my own my own mind. So I'll do that now and you can watch that. I've gone right ahead there and welded all the way around. So it's nice and neat-ish. Bit of a mistake in the middle there with the wire feed. It welded itself to the tip of the nozzle, which as you can see is still the old one. I'm still waiting to buy a new one. This is now heavier than the sun, obviously, because it's red hot from welding it. So what I will do now is, once it's cooled for a moment, I'll position it under the car and see where I need to put this end for my V-band, because what I'm hoping is there's enough material left here that I remove from here to put on that end to go into the silencer box. If not, I did buy another 1.5 meters of pipe because I'm an idiot, but never mind. So if anybody wants some cheap 3-inch pipe, I'm your man. I'm no doubt have a friend who wants that, but yes, I'll let this cool and I'll position her under there. So using a degree in gasology, I've roughly marked where I need to cut that for the V-band. So the first line was a mistake, the second line has an arrow against it, that's how I just identify where I need to cut. I'm going to cut that as square as I possibly can. Now, when I weld this to the V-band, this is the end that goes to the V-band, obviously. It doesn't matter if it's perfectly square or not. If there's a tiny gap, it'll be very easy to bridge. Obviously, the squarer it is, the neater the job. So I'm going to try and get that as square as possible. Usually, I would measure from the end of the pipe here with a rule or with a tape measure and mark all the way around it. That gives me a rough edge to follow with the cutting disc. But unfortunately, I can't do that with this because the end is quite scruffily cut down there, so that won't work anyway. I've seen people put tape around and all sorts. I've tried everything. The only thing I've ever found that works reasonably well is a Jubilee clip, and just go around the edge of it. Obviously it ruins the Jubilee clip, but that's no real issue. I do have a chain link cutter which does a very neat square cut, but it takes literally forever. So I'll go across that with the grinder and clean the edge up now, and then I'm going to tack this piece to that end and slot it into the silencer, because that is absolutely bang on that piece that's going to come off to go in there. It may actually be a little too long, so we'll see on that. The scruffy end can go into the exhaust box. This end, because it's never going to get seen again in there, it doesn't matter anyway, it's just going to be an overlap joint to the exhaust silencer, and then I'll just seam weld it all up and Bob's your uncle. Went right ahead there again and welded that cut. It came out nice and square actually. You can see the cut end here. You'll have seen me clean it up with the angle grinder, cut it with the grinder freehand, and then just give it a quick clean up with the angle grinder. There was actually a small gap on here. I always weld up the gap first. Obviously as you're welding, you're putting heat into the material. I know if you're TIG welding, you obviously reduce the current you need because the heat is already latent in the material. If you're MIG welding, it pretty much has the same effect. You don't need to turn the heat down, but if you start with the coldest section, you can then use your amperage a little better, so you're not going to burn holes through it as quickly. So I start with that part. Now, you'll also see I do continuous welds. I'm doing a dot, but it's not like I'm welding a panel on a car. This will move and change shape a little bit, but it won't warp like it would if I was welding a wing or a wheel arch on a car. So that's why I just do it in one straight hit. I don't do a couple of spots and then stop and let it cool. If I was doing that, this job would then take probably 2 or 3 hours per weld, and it's totally necessary. So for what I'm doing here. Now then, I'm going to try and position myself under the car. Not my favourite job at my age, and I will try and position this in place and see if it fits for a starter for 10, and then tack it to the V-band, hopefully. Okie dokie. This is going to be a tiny bit wiggly wobbly because I'm, as you can see, laid on the floor under a car that's only about 6 inches off the floor. So I shall attempt to do it as smoothly as possible. I haven't practiced fit this at all, so it may not fit even in the slightest. There it goes. That piece goes in there, which is a good start. So if I give that a wiggle and shove it in there. Again, difficult one-handed. But we're quite close here. The distance is correct. Just needs to go further into the silencer. If it goes in a country mile, I don't want it to affect the silencing on that side. So, if that's the case, I will trim some off. In fact, that does look the case, and it would appear, judging by how much overlap there is here, I'm hoping you can see that I need to cut off quite a bit, actually about 3 inches off the end of there. About 2 inches actually, 2.5 inches. So I shall do that now and then reattach that to the end there. So I've trimmed a bit off the end there. That's not the neatest cut in the world, but it's going well inside that silencer intake there. So what I'm going to do is just set you down carefully on the floor, if I can, because life is a lot easier if I can use both hands. What she said. That slots in there quite nicely now. You can hear it bottom out. That's what I was hitting before. And actually, that fits bob on. You can see there on the V-band, that fits in there lovely and square actually. So I can get a few tacks on that and fully weld that. And the exhaust sits nice and high up, which is what I was wanting, between the cross member for the transmotion and the bottom of the bell transmission here and the transmission gearbox cross member, so I can remove things like that without actually taking out the car. So yeah, I'll get a couple of tacks on the V-band here and then I'll fully weld that, and then next step. That's that. Welded on that. Went for more of a row, sort of stack of quarters appearance on my welding there, as seems popular. I do that by moving a tiny bit as I do each spot. So I do a tiny weld into the last weld. It does it really nicely actually when you're using a lot of heat like that. There was a tiny weeny little gap there, so I had to turn the welder down a tiny bit, but as you can see it looks okay. If you take your time and do this really steady, which I would if I was doing it for a customer, and make sure it was super duper neat, then I could get that looking like I'd tigged it all the way around all day long, even with the MIG. Obviously you would know it wasn't tigged, but you can do it quite easily, but obviously speed is of the essence when it's my own car. Quality unfortunately comes second to getting it finished in the time I have. So I shall just wait for that to cool. I'll bob it back on the car, check that the V-band clamp works. I'll tack those to the silencers, and then that's as far as I'm going to go. All my change on the floor, obviously, from lying around on the floor. Managed to get a series of tacks really around that pipe. I like to get as much welded as I can without it looking a disaster. Trying to weld over shonky welds just makes it even shonkier, so you know some of those will need grinding back, especially on the other side, but I don't want those to move when I strip the exhaust off the car. These aren't finish welded, but when I come to take the engine out now, I will completely finish weld this. The engine's coming out soon to spray the interior and under the bonnet, and then I'll be wiring up a mega squirt. If anybody watches my videos this long, I'll be buying a mega squirt and wiring that. Done the same at the other side. That's fully welded, that's fully welded. And for anybody who can see with my shaking about, I've burnt a hole through here when I welded that up. That is that super thin pipe. I don't like it at all, but it's all I had at the time. I burnt a couple of little holes in there, just try to get some tacks in there. Again, this will be up on the ramp when I come to take this apart. All I want it to do is stay together so it doesn't move now. It is finished. This is all cut, V-banded and bracketed together. I have welded most of it now, so as those don't move when I take the silencers off, because there's nothing worse than a spot breaking off or something and then having to reassemble it all to weld it all again. This part here is fully welded in. I put that in ages ago, and that now tees off, so you can see it's a true twin system. but leading off 1 turbo. Hopefully that'll sound nice. Can't wait to get this thing running.